A data miner has officially leaked the Nintendo Switch Pro. Let's talk about it. It seems like every passing day we get more information about the new Nintendo Switch Pro console or the Super Nintendo Switch. And I'm happy to report we have some brand new information regarding the Switch Pro that we have to talk about. So according to a data miner named Skyers M, claims that the firmware on the Nintendo Switch has some references to new hardware codename Aula. Now, according to Skyers, Aula reportedly uses a Mariko Tegra X1 Plus SoC, which is actually the same chip used in the Nintendo Switch Lite and the 2019 revision. Now, if you remember right, in my previous videos, I do talk about the new Nintendo Switch Pro using a Tegra X1 Plus chip that will be able to upscale to 4K resolution, but Skyers actually tells us some new information that we have yet to know about, and that is a new Realtek chip which advertises itself as the 4K UHD multimedia SoC. Now, the data miner does say that the display is probably not a higher resolution on the tablet itself, but he speculates that the 4K Realtek chip might be in the new Nintendo Switch Dock Pro, which will allow for 4K resolution when played on a television. The firmware supposedly suggests that a substantially better cooling and battery life system will be in the updated Aula Switch Pro. The data miner also specifically mentions that the Aula model definitely has an upgraded display in the form of an OLED screen. If you're not excited about an OLED display, you should be, because this is going to be a game changer on the Switch Pro. Now, to dispel any potential ideas that the Nintendo Switch Pro will have an OLED screen that is 4K on the handheld mode is not likely. This OLED display will likely be the same resolution as mentioned previously. So just to let you know again, the Switch handheld will not be able to go to 4K. They likely won't be doing that. So the OLED display is going to be a big upgrade from the previous LCD, but it's only incremental in terms of resolution. So if your hope was to get 4K display on the handheld version of the Switch Pro, just go ahead and get rid of that. Get rid of that line of thinking, because it's never going to happen, at least not for now. I could see it happening in the future whenever the APU mobile chips and the Tegra chip gets much better, but at this point it's really impossible to do, and that's primarily due to the battery life and cooling just not being up to standard. If it was plugged in 24/7 or had an insane battery life, then I could see them doing a 4K OLED, but at this point it just doesn't make sense. The primary aspect that we have to focus on is the 4K UHD multimedia SoC that will be in the 4K dock, or the Dock Pro, whatever you want to call it. There's a reason if you go to Amazon, Best Buy, GameStop, Target, Walmart, any other place, even Nintendo.com, and try to purchase a Nintendo Switch dock, it's pretty much impossible. There's no way that you're going to be able to do it. And that is for the simple fact that they're going to be releasing a new Dock Pro and probably just a new refreshed dock for the previous generation of Nintendo Switch. The Dock Pro that features the 4K UHD multimedia SoC and a regular Nintendo Switch dock that is hopefully refreshed and updated, that has the intentions of not scratching your LCD screen from your original Nintendo Switch. In my opinion, the original Nintendo Switch dock was pretty bad, so I'm looking forward to seeing what they do for this Dock Pro. But that begs the question, with the new Nintendo Switch Pro console, is that thing going to be able to work on the previous dock? Or to flip things around, is the original Nintendo Switch going to be compatible with the 4K Switch Pro dock that features the 4K technology? Meaning, is my original Nintendo Switch going to upscale when docked in the Switch Pro dock to 4K? Or is it only going to be limited to the Nintendo Switch Pro handheld? The likely result that I see happening, and this is a Nintendo thing, is if you have the original Nintendo Switch and you put it in the Nintendo Switch Pro dock, then it likely will not utilize the 4K SoC. It'll only utilize the previous dock features, because that is just what Nintendo does. Now, as much as I do hope that they have backwards compatibility support, I don't even think it'll have that. I think if you want to dock your Nintendo Switch Pro, you got to use a Pro dock. And if you want to dock a Nintendo Switch console, then you have to use their refreshed Nintendo Switch dock, or just use your previous one that you already have. Now, for those of you that are still calling BS about the new Nintendo Switch Pro being 4K compatible, here is what I'll tell you right now. During a Bloomberg story in September, Nintendo has reportedly started asking developers to make their existing games 4K ready in preparation for the new hardware. Now, you're probably going to mention that Doug Bowser already said that the Nintendo Switch Pro is not happening yet. They're going to focus on the current Nintendo Switch and other form factors that they have out, like the Nintendo Switch Lite. And what I'll tell you right now is that is what all companies do. Why would Doug Bowser tell people, hey, we've got a new Nintendo Switch Pro coming out, so you should probably not spend your money on current Nintendo Switch consoles that we have that are currently on the shelves? Of course, he's not going to tell anybody that the Switch Pro is in the works, because why would he do that? That's potentially harming the sales of the Nintendo Switch console and the Nintendo Switch Lite. I mean, hell, I bet you right now the people that are watching this video are probably asking themselves, should I go out and buy a Nintendo Switch, or should I wait for the Switch Pro? And that's exactly what Doug Bowser is attempting to avoid. He wants people to use their money now and then use their money later whenever the Switch Pro comes out. So what I'll tell you right now is the Switch Pro is actually happening. I don't care what anybody says. We're going to be getting a new Switch in 2021, and it's probably going to be early 2021, and it will support 4K. In my opinion, we're going to be getting it before the end of Nintendo's fiscal year. That's just the reality. They're going to release a new hardware before the end of the year because they definitely want to keep their investors happy. Now, whether or not the datamine information from Skyer actually is true, is he just full of himself? I guess we're going to have to find out, but I'll say right now that you should probably take a lot of this information with a grain of salt, because at this point it's just speculation. Nothing is confirmed, but I've got a little hunch, and I've had hunches before that have came to fruition. This has been Wes, and I will see you on the next video.